Welcome to our latest explainer. We're jumping right into a totally fascinating hidden tug of war that's happening right under our noses. Seriously, today we're connecting the everyday sugar sitting in your kitchen pantry, those amazing sweets you're picking up for the upcoming Diwali festivals, and the fuel tank of your car. I know, it sounds like an absolutely crazy trio, right? But as we peel back the layers of these recent market reports and government data, you're going to see just how deeply intertwined these three things really are.
So, here's the big question on everyone's mind. Are Diwali sweets going to cost you more this year? You know how it is. During the festive season, sugar demand literally goes through the roof. It impacts farmers, local food businesses, and, well, everyday consumers like us. If you're wondering whether your favorite festive treats are going to burn a hole in your pocket, the answer actually lies in a massive domino effect that's currently shaking up the entire agricultural industry.
And here's the stark reality that has everyone sweating right now. Sugar prices have already surged by roughly 10% in just the last month alone. 10%. That's a huge jump in a really short amount of time for such a basic, everyday staple. And looking at recent reports, these elevated prices could easily stick around for at least the next few months. But to figure out why your grocery bill is creeping up, we have to trace this whole thing back to the very beginning of the supply chain.
Section 1. The trigger. Weather worries.
You know, every massive economic shift has a root cause. And for this current sugar panic, well, it's blowing in the wind. The major sugar-producing states in India, specifically Maharashtra and Karnataka, have seen some really concerning low rainfall this year. We're right in the middle of an El Niño weather pattern, which, as you might know, notoriously messes with normal monsoon cycles. Since agriculture relies so heavily on the weather, this lack of rain has sparked intense fear and speculation about a lower sugarcane yield for the upcoming harvest. It's a pretty simple equation, right? Less sugarcane grows, less sugar gets made. But man, it triggers a very complex panic.
Section 2. Food versus fuel.
See, in today's economy, sugarcane isn't just something you eat anymore. It's actually a critical component for transportation. On one side of the scale, you've got the massive domestic consumption of a vast population that definitely has a sweet tooth, especially around the holidays. But on the other side, you've got the government's ambitious goal of blending 20% ethanol into our petrol. And sugarcane is a massive raw material, a primary feedstock for making that ethanol. This essentially creates an intense dual demand on just a single crop.
The sheer scale of this is absolutely wild. According to the Indian Sugar and Bioenergy Manufacturers Association, or ISMA, sugar mills have diverted an amount equivalent to roughly 30 lakh metric tons of sugar straight into ethanol production this year. That is nearly 10% of the country's entire sugar production capacity. So think about it. When you take 10% of a crucial food supply, turn it into fuel, and then add the threat of a bad weather year, yeah, you can start to see exactly why the market is getting incredibly nervous.
Now, to understand how the government might try to fix this, we need a super quick science lesson on how sugarcane is actually processed. First, you start with the raw sugarcane juice. As you extract the sugar from it, you're left with this thick, syrupy substance called molasses. The very first byproduct is B-heavy molasses, which actually still contains a really good amount of sugar. But if you keep extracting, you eventually get down to C-heavy molasses. By the time you reach this C-heavy stage, the maximum possible amount of actual sugar has already been pulled out for us to eat.
So, because of these looming supply fears, the government is reportedly looking at a brand new strategy. They might actually ask sugar mills to stop making ethanol out of the raw juice and that B-heavy molasses and restrict them to only using the C-heavy stuff. This basically ensures that the absolute maximum amount of sugar goes to our kitchens first. And to make up for the shortfall in ethanol, the plan would be to pivot to other feedstocks, like maize and rice, which currently have enough reserves. Though to be fair, that opens up a whole other can of agricultural worms for another day.
Section 3. Fear, hoarding, and prices.
You know, sometimes the market doesn't react to what's actually happening, but rather what people are terrified might happen. Take a look at this. On July 28th, the government of India came out and stated point blank, there is enough sugar for domestic consumption. This is a super critical nuance to keep in mind. There is literally no actual physical shortage of sugar sitting in the warehouses right now. The mills didn't just magically run out of stock overnight.
So why on earth are prices jumping 10%? Well, two words: speculative hoarding. This happens when traders stockpile goods entirely out of fear of a future shortage. Remember that El Niño weather worry we talked about earlier? That fear gets traders thinking, okay, if there's less sugar next season, prices are going to be astronomical. Let me just buy and hold as much as I possibly can right now.
This sudden, massive rush to buy artificially tightens the current supply, so it drives up the price you're paying today, purely based on the fear of tomorrow. Crazy, right?
If we lay this all out on a timeline, you can really see the tension building up. The entire sugar market runs on a cycle that resets every year on October 1st. That's the start of the new crushing season. All of this current market anxiety, it's just about bridging the gap between today and October 1st. In July, the government actually started physically verifying warehouse stocks. Then on July 28th, they told the public, hey, supplies are fine. But to fight off that psychological fear and all the hoarding, they slapped strict stock limits on dealers from August 1st all the way to November 30th. They're making sure nobody can artificially starve the market before the new sugar arrives.
Section 4. Government and Mill Responses. Now, the government and the sugar mills are coming at this issue from very different angles. To keep inflation in check right before the ultra-sensitive festive season, the government didn't just stop at stock limits and checking warehouses. They went ahead and outright banned all sugar exports. They're literally pulling every single regulatory lever they have to make sure that whatever sugar is in the country right now stays in the country and goes straight to consumers instead of just sitting around in some speculator's warehouse.
Meanwhile, the sugar mills, represented by ISMA, have tossed their own counterproposal over to the Union Food Secretary. Their idea is actually pretty straightforward. They want to beat the festival rush and flood the market with fresh supply. So they're asking for permission to start the sugarcane crushing process 10 to 15 days ahead of the usual October schedule. In theory, this would pump new sugar into the market a lot faster and hopefully cool down those panicked prices.
But hey, this is economics, so there is always a catch, right? The mills are making an offer. We'll release the new sugar early to help bring down prices for everybody. However, their demand is that the government has to step in and provide financial compensation for the operational losses they're going to take by firing up the crushing process early. So what we have here is a really high-stakes negotiation playing out right at the exact moment festival demand is starting to peak.
Section 5. The ultimate choice. We are basically watching a giant game of economic dominoes fall into one incredibly tense standoff, and honestly, there is no easy answer here. Look at the players. The farmers, they just want timely, fair payment for their crops, no matter what the weather does. The sugar mills need to recover their costs and want a safety net if they're forced to change their schedules. Consumers, like you and me, we just want low prices for our daily tea and our festival sweets. And then there's the government, stuck right in the middle, trying to juggle food inflation while still hitting their long-term environmentally crucial ethanol targets. It is a crazy, delicate balancing act where keeping one side happy almost always means squeezing another.
So we're going to wrap up this explainer with the ultimate question that the entire country is waiting to see answered. As everyone watches the weather and waits for the new crushing season to finally kick off, if this upcoming harvest actually does fall short, a really hard choice is going to have to be made. Where is that limited supply of sugarcane going to go? Will it go to sweeten the food in your kitchen, or is it going to go to power the gas tank in your car? It is a massive economic trade-off, and it hinges entirely on the final crop yield. I really hope this explainer helped you get a handle on the fascinating dynamics behind your grocery bill. Keep a close eye on those harvest reports, and we'll see you next time.